But if it's further clarifying for the board to say something to the effect of in person or through other reporting mechanisms to.
I just like it because I think, and you know, maybe run this by one of the, you know, people that we're having help us with, because we're talking about looking through the lens, right, of diversity. You know, I'm wondering, does everyone feel comfortable when they're, you know, reporting? If it says district officials, that might be a barrier.
So are you thinking in the policy it would be helpful for people to know what their options are? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, or how to report. I know what you're saying, Larry. We don't want to get procedural here, so I'm trying to find kind of a balance of how would you say this so it allows me, if I'm being, you know, have a threat made against me, that's already not feeling safe and I'm feeling like I'm in a dangerous spot. Maybe I don't feel comfortable reporting it, that I know that officials means this broader scope. Does that make sense?
Just having a moment of pragmatic, that if I'm 13 and I'm not feeling safe, that I'm not reading the policy.
But a parent might read the policy.
Well,
right?
but having in the procedures, absolutely what your options are. My other concern is if we start listing what the different ways are, if it's not listed in the policy, does that mean it's not an option? This is a nice vague, report it, so we can take action. And then definitely in the procedures, we want to make sure that everybody knows that this hotline is available.
And maybe Larry's wording I thought might be helpful in terms of whether in person or through other.
What I added is personally or through other available means.
Yeah.
So
That
prevail.
actually
I
yeah,
think that helps. And maybe,
that helps.
do you mind running it through Chandra or, you know, just, because we've been talking about looking at our policies through that, you know, lens, and that's been part of our training, so.
I'm certain she would be more than willing to take a look at it.
Yeah, just looking, and by adding your wording, what does that make it, you know, everyone feel like they have the opportunity to report and.
I'm seeing heads nodding, so I think there's agreement that that language would be added in person or
I think that's a helpful clarification. I do too.
So we'll see that modification at the next meeting. Any other discussion?
We had an issue at Legislative Assembly that dealt with protecting the victim instead of the perpetrator. You remember that from Assembly, sort of? Okay. But focus on that, and it passed. I wonder if it got high ranking, but it was about situations where the victim was removed from their school while the perpetrator of the threat was actually kept in the school.
That's
And,
the sex.
It was a legislative proposal, is that?
It was the sex offender one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I thought that was good.
Right, seeing no further discussion on this, we'll go to the next item on the agenda, which is board reports and communications. Just by way of introduction, the conversations with the board have been published in the calendar. They're all 7 p.m. They were in your August 7th briefing with a request to get feedback. The dates were built around the dates that we said that were, well, we avoided the meeting days, obviously, and the days that we had school improvement visits. And then they looked for Tuesdays that would be doable. And it was built, I don't think we heard back from anybody, so it was put into the calendar as that. And now we're just looking to publish the question prompts. And I just provided some framework, but happy to tailor these to your needs. So do board members have any thoughts on what the questions we'd like to have for the community? And these will be published in advance, and then they'll also be available at the conversations with the board.
What does number 3 mean? Looking, what opportunities should we capitalize on in the next year? Is there a more simple meaning to that?
It is absolutely open to edit, so you see something
what
that
did you
is...
mean?
What did I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of drawing from the same one that we had last time, we had, as we look at the next 3 to 5 years, and I think that's what we've heard some from the community, that they like to see us looking out, not just to the next year, but also into the future. So it was just capturing that question and rewording it in a little bit different way, recognizing that we're a year closer to the reconfiguration and everything.
More long-term.
Would you like more clarity? I am
Yes.
completely open to
Yeah.
edits on that. I just jotted these down and wanted to bring them before you, so.
I see where you're trying to get at. You're trying to, talk first of all what's happening in the more immediate future, and then long-term,
Right.
look out for long-term planning that we might have to do. So I think based on last year's conversations, it might be helpful to be a little bit more explicit about that, maybe give some examples, because I think it was a little hard for folks to distinguish between what we meant, in terms of the challenges in the next 3 to 5 years. The conversation kind of, instead of having 3 distinct sections, sometimes it would just meld together, which organically happens with groups. So I personally think it's good to ask for some long-term, ideas that folks might have, or things they would want us to focus on in the long term. But I think helping folks frame that.
Yeah, and what was in my head, that's exactly it, is that we are really close to the changes now, and we're so focused on that. Are there things that we need to be looking at that are beyond that are in people's minds that they would like to bring to our attention?
So if you changed it to, I liked the language better than any use, so long-term ideas, what long-term ideas should we pursue in the next 3 to 5 years? I think makes more sense than opportunities capitalized.
Potential challenges.
Do you think that gives enough framework? Or is that too open-ended, or?
No, I think it's plainer. It's
So-
not clear. Just what do you think we should pursue in the next 3 to 5 years?
It's a nice neutral. Not challenges or opportunities, ideas, just leaves it open to interpretation from the
Yeah.
listener.
Would it
So
be
are you
helpful?
saying, just to capture what you're all saying, what ideas do you,
Would you like us to
pursue
to pursue
long-term?
as we work on long-term planning?
What ideas would you like us to focus on?
Long-term ideas.
For the next 3 to 5 years.
Focus on long-term, okay.
And I don't know if it would be helpful to add pros and cons to this, right? Because you don't want to limit the discussion, but maybe to say, because for 3 to 5 years, we kind of think about curriculum ideas, maybe kind of give buckets for folks.
That's,
So
I just
maybe
feel like
prompt
some
some
framework
thoughts.
might get the conversation started.
Frame,
So IE, do you want to say IE?
Growth in the north end, I think, would be.
Or growth?
They would probably say that
Grow.
automatically, don't you think? I think
It's going to be
that's
saying a lot of things
yeah.
that aren't part of these questions.
But I liked the idea of if you were to give buckets, then you would say curriculum, maybe we'll hear about science
academic programs or
programs.
extracurricular ideas. I'm trying to think really broad.
Technology.
Technology, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Business partnership.
Career development, career and college readiness.
Career and college readiness. Community partnership.
No, but I think, because having those 5, I think it might prompt some folks to understand what
That's
kind
what
of
I did
feedback
too,
we're looking
yeah.
for.
So I have growth, curriculum, academics, technology, career and college readiness, and community partnerships. That'll get them started, right?
Yeah, that
Okay.
should help us get going.
Not to confuse things even further, you've made a strong statement about your interest in the achievement and opportunity gap, and I'm wondering if perhaps this might be an opportune time to engage parent or community about their thoughts about how to address achievement and opportunity gap specifically as we look over a longer term period of time.
That's another good
I like that. And that aligns with what the district goals are. or district. I always say
Yeah, I like that.
priorities, goals.
I like the second one very much.
Number 2?
Just got quite a bit of feedback.
So do we want to add a fourth one that split it up 4 ways? I know, but I
know,
mean,
it's
but really
last
focus
time.
on the opportunity
I-
achievement gaps. We're gonna, if we keep it to 3, we're gonna have to get rid of one.
Maybe a subtle thing might be to list it first in our list of categories. Might prompt folks to think about it. Or that third
Got
one.
it, under the
Number
third,
3.
okay.
I do like, I think, personally, I think people are gonna get confused a little bit with number 1, even though I think it's a great question. I'm not quite sure how people are gonna answer it, though I get what we're trying to say.
You wanna
I've
replace
been wanting
that?
to have this conversation, here's what the board roles are. But I also like what you're saying, Larry, trying to align this with the priorities.
I think you have an excellent opportunity with the third question to really articulate that this is an important topic for the board, and we would value and welcome your thoughts and opinions about how we should move forward in perhaps ways we're not thinking about. I think it's worthy of a standalone question. I think it's worthy of having it out there as, I think if it's melded into a whole bunch of other topics, there's a greater likelihood that some of those other topics are going to be explored, given the composition of the folks who tend to attend these. And so I think it's an opportunity to perhaps get some different orientation and different thought process going around that priority of the board.
So how about if we renumber it? We get rid of number 1.
I think so.
We renumber it, 2 will become 1 and 3 will become 2, and we finish it out with, I don't know how you want to word it, but what are your ideas on how we can address the opportunity achievement gap?
I think I like that one not as the last one, because I like what you did with the last one.
Yeah, I think I would leave 3 as the last one and put 3
Oh,
down
right,
as
okay.
Number 2.
second
So-
one.
Or we could even do number 1, I mean.
I think-
Actually, I
No,
like
I
number
think-
2 because then the conversation will get going, so.
Right.
Yeah,
Beyond
yeah, yeah.
people's
I think you have something
Okay.
relevant to everybody, something that people might be relevant, others might not know how to answer. Then 3, that's the positive of, not positive necessarily, but helping people to forward think. I like it.
I think we might have to describe what we mean by achievement gap. I
Yeah,
think
you
that
know, I
might be
think-
jargony.
Just a statement that there is an achievement opportunity gap between.
I think
Yeah.
just to acknowledge that not all of our students achieve at the same levels, and we know that some of those differences in achievement follow very predictable patterns of ethnicity and income.
Sounds great.
Do we like Larry's?
And we're prioritizing that as a district, as a board.
What ideas do you have for helping us address this?
Yeah, one of our district priorities, we could say, is, that helps you give context.
While I'm writing these,
Well, you said that last one, so you're writing that part of it. What ideas?
you can find it in one of my recent meetings letters.
Okay. All right, are we comfortable with those then? And great, thank you very much for your
No, that
input
sounds
and
good.
help on those. All right, next item on the agenda is future agenda items. Any-
Just came to me tonight as I'm looking at this ream of paper. Is there a way we can suggest to the community that if they're going to give us comments, that they write it in a digital format to Cindy, and then if we need to have it printed out, that's available? But this is a lot of dead trees here, and I will read it all, but I'll read it all in a digital format and save us. That's a lot of paper.
I prefer the paper,
Okay,
I prefer
It
the
is.
paper.
all right.
but it is certainly an option, for sure.
All right, that's fine.
Could say no
That would
digital.
make it confusing for the community.
Okay.
Just
I'm not
recycle
feeling bad for the
career
form.
options.
I think the thing is that the
Sometimes
community,
we hug our
the community
eyes,
knows
that.
we've gotten it, and I think sometimes there's this,
Okay.
maybe a vacuum, not that we don't get it, but they know it's in our hands.
a good feeling.
But I understand what you're saying. That's why we can recycle it.
Sacrificed his life.
Not really, it's all
Put it in your garbage bin.
So
Oh, I will. Oh, I will.
Are we moving on to the next agenda item?
I would like to add a future agenda item. So I have a couple here. One is based on the reams of paper back to the principal evaluations. I know that I've talked about bringing this a couple times up as an agenda item, and that Carolyn and other staff members or administrators have provided us documents. But I think it is a good conversation because I think it goes along with the conversation about what we talked about in Larry's evaluation, what we're talking about in trying to connect with our community more in our equity diversity plan, and how our principals in general run the district if the community is not having a voice in that, and that is part of, to be honest, I haven't read, yes,
What is your request?
that we have this discussion.
That we have it as a discussion item?
Yes.
Okay. Is there board majority agreement on that?
I was trying to give a rationale for why.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
So,
sorry.
yeah,
I didn't
so
want to
I
get too deep into the discussion.
No, I hear
so-
you,
Yeah,
I hear you.
yeah, okay.
But I also want to give a rationale
Yeah,
for
sure.
putting all the pieces together of why I thought it was important discussion.
Did you have more to add then?
You guys can ask me questions if you want. And
I'm sorry.
it's fine.
Yeah.
No, it's all right.
I would like a study session on that as opposed to just a discussion item.
Sounds like open study slot.
It sounds like something that should be looked at, I don't know, in a little more depth.
I
Just a
think,
discussion item.
yeah, I think we could use some more background information. I certainly would have questions
So
about.
talk about TPEP and everything.
Right,
A
and
long
are we
discussion.
opening up contracts in the middle of the year and that kind of thing, so.
As far as principal.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yes, principals are part of TPEP, so we'd have to.
So I'm not getting a clear answer.
Study
What
session.
we're looking for.
Study session.
Sounds like
I
a
heard
better.
it, I heard information, and then I heard study session, so tell me what we're asking for.
Study session, but it doesn't need to be a full hour and a half study session. Like a portion of the study session. It looks like we had an open slot next time, I think, or October 10th or.
We'll also just remind board members that we have a lot of things that are on our priorities list that we don't have study sessions scheduled for as well, so.
So that's what I was trying to give the rationale for, is I think that this is part of our priorities when we're talking about engaging our community in our diversity equity plan. I think this, and how do we engage our community in general in all the evaluations we're doing, I think that this is relevant to our priorities. It's part of that, how are we connecting with our community? How are we making sure that we are making every voice heard and representing all the voices? And part of that does have to do with how is the principal performing in a school and what voice does the community have in being able to evaluate that. And a lot of our issues last year a lot of the issues that came to the board began at the local school. So I'm not blaming a principal, but maybe had a community evaluation. Had we done a community evaluation as part of the evaluation, some of these things might have come to the forefront before they spilled and came to a board meeting.
So I just want to ask, this is really tricky for me because I feel like we're having a discussion before we put it on the agenda. So I just
Try
thought,
not to. I
yeah,
don't want
but so,
to.
and that's why I don't want to add to it. So let me know if I'm crossing the line here. But so my question is it something that we can even discuss if we have contractual obligations? If I understand information we've gotten from Human Resources and Legal that we can't, because of existing contracts, we can't do this, seek public I'm not saying not seek public comment, but have it directly related to an employee's evaluation besides the superintendent. Do I understand correctly that we received that information? So,
I don't recall that.
I feel that we received information that we would be opening up contracts and negotiations.
It
There
would-
would be a change to the current
To the current contract, for sure.
If it was a required mandated element of principal evaluation, we would need to address that and we confer with our principals. And I would suspect that our principals would want to have very clear and specific parameters around that would be incorporated into their bargaining agreement.
So having a study session on what we currently do and talking about it though is
but
not
also it's
putting
not,
something, it's not, what did you call it? Giving that direction. You called it pretty firmly something there. And
If it was a required element of the
Yeah.
evaluation process.
so, I mean, that's not, it's just a study session
whether we would want to read
about TPAP,
required.
about what is required, what we're doing, maybe what other districts are doing, what WAC applies or RCW, because I know that community is supposed to be involved in building plans and improvement plans. And so, you know, that kind of things in a study session doesn't give clear direction to anything. It's just a study session.
Well, for sure. You know, I just, you know, like Kimberly and folks have given feedback about making sure we have meetings that definitely produce a good outcome, and I would hate for us to schedule time to sit down and then be told, well, you know, the contracts, it doesn't allow us to do this anyways. You know, having a discussion about community input and what options might exist. You know, I think that might be worth scheduling some time.
And our policy.
And
I would,
it's fine.
I would be reluctant to ask staff to do a bunch of research and do a whole big presentation, given the long list of other items that are extremely time sensitive as we approach 2017. So what I'm hearing is a study of what other districts have done, I mean, that's a,
No, I'm not at all.
okay, so give me clarity on what we're asking.
said that?
I said that.
Yes, I'm sorry. That's not me.
Didn't sound bad
I
to me
wasn't,
at
that's
the
not what I
time.
was asking. I wasn't asking for a big, I'm asking it to be more simple than that. That we look at what does the framework say, what does our policy say, what does the RCW say, and have a discussion about it. And maybe Sandy might have been taking that a step further to say a study session, because there might be, we might not be able to have that discussion on our own
This is all
without.
gone.
No, I think you're saying we might need them to give us some information, the administration, because we might not be able to just discuss this up here without having some relevant information.
I feel like I'm hearing a bigger conversation, and it's planned one, and I think it's an important one we have every year, community engagement, but through the lens of our new equity policy. And I think that actually could be a very good use of a study session time, and this can be a subset of that, but a larger, how do we engage the community with that equity plans focus, and I think.
And
Is
give
that a
a
study
voice.
session or a
I
conversation?
think a
Oh,
study
a study
session,
session.
absolutely, that we start, how do we do that? Looking at what other districts are doing, you know, certainly we heard a lot of legislative conference about Race to the Top and the work that the districts in the South End are doing together, you know, to keep their community, help community engagements, and so I think there's some valuable work and understanding what we can do there.
So a general discussion about how we engage with the community on the equity and diversity issue.
The equity lens,
With the equity lens.
Right.
priority.
With getting feedback about, and I guess I wouldn't, because if we're talking about with the equity lens too, not just, there's many staff members that interact with the community, not just principals, you know. I think having a discussion, instead of doing it just piecemeal, do a comprehensive discussion about getting feedback on staff member interaction
which I think is excellent, but I would also like this piece included.
Yeah, as a
As a
subset, but
piece
making
of it,
sure,
yeah.
you know.
Like Sandy
It
says,
did
it's
sound like
subset.
y'all were removing it. It did sound like you had just kind of taken out the original request, but,
No, she.
Okay.
She said it's
Yeah,
subset.
Sandy said it, yeah.
okay.
So is there, am I seeing agreement on that?
Yes. Yes.
All right. Are we ready to move on to the next
I
agenda?
have another agenda item. The screening, we had talked about it in the study session, so the screening of the high cap being dropped at the 2nd and 6th grade. So we got more information, and so I'm not quite sure if this is something that we need. I was gonna ask for it as a discussion item, but you said, Carolyn, that we're going to be getting a packet in our board briefing.
There'll be some further explanation coming in this Friday's briefing, so what I'd suggest is maybe review that information, and then if you have further questions, we can address those either individually or in a meeting or through some additional avenues. So, but we are preparing additional information for the board for this Friday to kind of provide a fuller picture and explanation of what we're doing and why, and kind of the process it's been through.
And research links on the
Yeah.
website, right?
I want to say really quickly, I tried to find the application for the highly capable, and I could not find a link. And when I hit on application, and I tried it like 3 times today, there was not a link, at least, now I did it from my phone, because I don't typically get on my computer.
The phone doesn't,
I
the
don't
phone version
believe-
does not have all
I don't
of the
believe the
links.
application period
Yeah,
for
it's not the
15,
right
16 is
period.
open yet.
So
So
the application
we'll
won't be there.
We'll be launching all of that in the next couple of weeks, and we've got parent meetings and all of that set up. So I think it's probably not a live link right now, because we've just wrapped up 14, 15, and then we're preparing to launch for 15, we've just wrapped up 15, 16, and we're preparing to launch for 16, 17.
So I would just ask that that our communication be really clear on this, because even when I went, I had a hard time, understanding the dates and.
And oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's kind of why I wanted as a discussion item next time.
Something I've noticed
Talking about it.
is our website, when you view it on a phone,
Yeah.
not so much on iPads and tablets, but on a phone, it's, the information is edited down. You get less, you don't get the full website when you're looking on a phone. It recognizes that you're on a phone and whittles it down quite a bit. So maybe just peek next time you're at your computer, and I don't know exactly what you're doing, just to double check.
Okay.
That's not just true of ours, it's true of.
It's just how the system is set up,
Yeah.
how the system's set up.
And they have the high cap information night, and I know I went last year, it's enormously helpful because it is not an easy to understand system. So if you have time, I would really recommend attending that.
I'm just worried if we're cutting out, I would like to have this as a discussion, because I'm worried if we're cutting all this out, is it inequitable? And I understand what Carolyn was saying, that there's all this.
Can we get the info in the briefing and
Yeah, sure.
then revisit it?
I just don't want too much time to go by, then people can't actually apply and get the information. That's what I'm concerned about.
And can I go back just for a moment to the first one, not a discussion of the content, but just the timing? So we have a scheduled open session on the 13th, and I had a discussion with Janet about using that time to begin to have a discussion about our classroom space needs for next year, related to both growth and the prospects for universal full-day kindergarten that the state is funding. I think that's a really critical topic for us to dive into, because I think there are huge logistical issues around all of that, and there are also really significant equity issues around that we need to start discussing and have resolution to probably by winter break, because then after that the kindergarten registration process starts, so we're going to have some clarity for our community about what direction we may be heading. So I realize these are important topics, but I'm concerned about prioritization of that topic in relationship to some of these other issues, which are, I think, perhaps perhaps more aligned with the priorities as we look at enrollment mitigation and kind of the challenges we face over the next couple of years.
And it gets back to that communication piece, that we're going to need that.
I just don't want to
Communication ready
push
go.
it. Is there a place where we can put that where it doesn't have to take up the whole study session or?
You like to go?
Maybe come in at half hour earlier.
I think you can still add it. I think you can still add it whether we like to talk or not.
Kimberly's asking if it can be a half an hour, and my response is, we like to talk, that's pretty hard to fit anything for us. Yeah.
Well, we only have 3 more times better.
Yep.
Hard crap.
So are we, when we're looking at the agenda, or the study session that Larry mentioned, are you saying you would like to add time to that, to, is
I don't know.
that,
I mean, I just feel, I think since we're all here and we all kind of have been part of this equity diversity, I know it's going to shift over, but it'd be nice to have the conversation sooner versus later.
So starting, that's a 4 o'clock board meeting. So it would go,
late?
Or the next one, and
All right with that.
27.
I'm all right with going late.
So the 27th, our study session topic is our 14-15 assessment results, which tends to be a pretty dense study session with lots of information, lots of discussion and questions as we look at state assessments, SAT, ACT, all kinds of others. So, I mean, I think it's just a question of management of time and discipline of topic or willingness to meet for a long period of time.
Well, and that's, I'm worried because I know that space conversation is going to be a big one, and I'm worried that we may run out of energy to do both after a board meeting. What if we
Come in early, the other one.
3?
I could do that.
October 13th.
Yeah.
And
Before the board meeting?
and did the community engagement.
Oh,
and
yeah,
that-
like
that-
we did for the Lucer.
Great.
And then that contains us,
Yeah, how long?
It's a finite period of time.
right? We
What
have
are
to
you
be done by
saying?
4, and then we have the board meeting, and then the conversation.
That sounds good.
Members are all available, 3 o'clock?
Yes, I am.
All right. Next item on the agenda is board reports.
Well, I was going to share something with the board, and I'll be sending it to you in an email. I received a summary of internal audit in local government, along with some attachments, and I wanted to share that with the board, so I'll send that to Larry so that he can forward it on. It's about the internal auditor. Okay?
All right, first up is Sandy.
Yeah, so I apologize, this is going to go long, there was a lot going on. Attended Sorensen's first day, which is always cute and adorable and very, very well organized. And then later that morning, we received an invitation from Eileen Jowell for the community schools meeting. And I attended that, and it really was just such an excellent opportunity for us to learn about the work we're doing along that, working in the equity, achievement gap, et cetera, issues. So I really wanted to bring that back for 2 reasons. One, I think it would be, and I know that was part of Eileen's goal, was to get all of the individual board members to attend one of these meetings so that everybody has the opportunity to learn about all the great things. The community schools meeting,
Community schools, okay.
the great things that are going on and the work that is being done. Obviously, our hang time programs are up and going. The King County Library is sponsoring events at those. They have a Day of the Dead Sugar Schools cooking class going